That morning didn't start with coffee. It started with the soft ding of a notification. Madison had left her tablet on the kitchen counter again, an iPad propped up in its case, screen still lit from a low-power idle. Next to it was an empty coffee mug with a lipstick mark on the rim and a half-written grocery list she must have scribbled before hopping in the shower. I wasn't trying to pry. I was just reaching past it for a banana and a protein bar when the alert popped up. The screen lit with a single message preview. Leo, you didn't sleep either? I couldn't stop thinking about last night. I froze mid-motion, banana still in my hand. My stomach dropped with that slow, sick kind of lurch like when you missed the last step going downstairs in the dark. My fingers tingled. I read it again, silently, not breathing. You didn't sleep either? I couldn't stop thinking about last night. I didn't know a Leo. Not in her family, not in our social circle, not at her job, or at least not someone she'd text like that. And I knew the way that message sounded. It wasn't vague. It wasn't platonic. It was loaded. The kind of message someone sends when they've crossed a line and they want to cross it again. I heard the bathroom door open upstairs, water still running. Her footsteps, soft but steady. I backed away from the tablet like it might accuse me of something. When she came down the stairs, drying her hair with a towel, she smiled the same effortless smile I'd fallen for years ago. She wore one of my old college sweatshirts, hers now, practically by law, and a pair of leggings. She looked relaxed. Beautiful, even. I hated that I noticed. Hey, she said, tossing the towel over a chair. You're up early. Yeah, I replied, trying to sound casual. Didn't sleep great. As I said it, I looked at her. And something in my face must have shifted because she stopped in her tracks. Her eyes narrowed just slightly. She was good at reading people, especially me. What's wrong? She asked, already walking toward me. I motioned toward the tablet. You got a message from someone named Leo. She paused. Not long. Not even a full beat. But just enough for my stomach to turn again. She picked up the tablet and read the screen. I watched her closely, her eyes didn't widen, her breath didn't hitch. She just smiled. Laughed even. Oh my God. That? She set the tablet back down and waved a hand like it was a smudge on a mirror. That's Leo from work. We always mess around in our team chat. Inside joke stuff. I said nothing. He's gay, she added quickly, like a shield. We joke like that all the time. Everyone in the office does. It's dumb, I know. Corporate humor. Don't read into it. Still nothing from me. Her expression shifted just slightly, like a switch being flipped or a chess piece moved into a new position. Wait, she said, arms folding across her chest. You think I'm flirting with him? Seriously. I don't know what I think, I admitted. It sounded weird. Jesus, Max, she muttered, turning away and running a hand through her damp hair. You know how you sound right now? Like one of those husbands who thinks every smile from a guy is some secret signal. That's not what I'm saying. Yes, it is, she said, now standing near the sink, staring out the window like it might offer her an exit from the conversation. You're saying you saw one message and jumped to a conclusion that I'm doing something behind your back. Do you know how that makes me feel? I hated this part. The emotional deflection. The way she turned out into guilt. I had nothing concrete, just one message. But it didn't feel small. It didn't feel harmless. I didn't mean to snoop, I said, my voice softer now. It just popped up while I was walking by. It caught me off guard. She turned around again, leaning on the counter. Her expression had gone icy. Controlled. Max, I work with these people every day. We spend more time together than I do with you some weeks. We have to laugh about something or we'd go crazy. Leo and I joke around. That's all it is. I nodded. Okay. No, she said, pushing off the counter. Not okay. You don't just get to drop this on me like I've done something wrong and then walk away with okay. If you trust me, trust me. Don't fish for drama. I felt my throat tighten. I wasn't fishing. Yes, you were, she snapped, more force in her voice now. You saw a message out of context and immediately thought the worst. That's not fair, Max. That's paranoia. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe Leo really was gay and flirted with everyone on the team. Maybe I was being oversensitive because I'd been stressed or tired or distant. Maybe. But deep down, I didn't believe it. Not fully. Not with how easily she spun the story. Not with how smoothly she took control of the narrative, how quickly she positioned herself as the offended party and me as the suspicious one. She walked past me then, muttering something about being late. I stood there in the kitchen, the banana still in my hand, heart still pounding. The front door opened and closed, and the silence that followed felt heavier than it should have. I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at nothing for a while. The toast I'd made had gone cold. I didn't eat it. My appetite had dissolved into something tight and sour in the pit of my stomach. I replayed the message over and over in my head. I couldn't stop thinking about last night. What had happened last night? She came home late. Said the meeting had run long. I'd been half asleep on the couch by the time she walked through the door, and she'd kissed my forehead and said, "You're cute when you snore," before heading upstairs. Nothing about that night felt suspicious until now. I looked down at her tablet still on the counter. Face down now. Like it always seemed to be these days. After that morning, I told myself to let it go. I told myself Madison wouldn't lie, not like that, not to me. We had history, trust, memories. I told myself the message was just weird timing, that I was reading too far into one line from some guy at her office. But even as I replayed her defense in my head, her calm laugh, the "he's gay" card, the hurt in her voice, I couldn't quiet the noise inside my chest. It wasn't just the message anymore. It was everything else that, when taken alone, could pass as normal, but together? They felt like puzzle pieces I hadn't realized were part of the same image. I started noticing things. Little things. Habits that had shifted over time so gradually I hadn't clocked the difference. She used to walk in the door and kick off her shoes with a sigh like she was glad to be home. Lately, she'd sit in the driveway for a few minutes before coming in, long enough that I once thought she might have fallen asleep out there. She said she was finishing a podcast. I believed her at the time. She'd always been organized, even a little type A, but now her routines had a new edge. She started laying her clothes out the night before, not just work clothes, but carefully selected outfits. Blouses with softer cuts. New jeans. Heels she used to reserve for dinner dates. And the perfume, something unfamiliar. Spicier. She said she got it during a sale. Her phone, once an afterthought tossed on the coffee table, now never left her side. She kept it on silent. Always face down. One night we were watching a movie and it buzzed just once, and she picked it up like she was disarming a bomb. I asked who it was. She said it was spam. Didn't even glance at me when she said it. Then there was the moment in the kitchen. It was maybe a week after the Leo message. I came up behind her while she was rinsing blueberries at the sink. No motive, no plan, just something I used to do all the time. I wrapped my arms around her waist gently, like always. She flinched. It wasn't dramatic. Just a quick jerk of her shoulders, like she didn't expect it. But I felt it. And when she realized it was me, she laughed it off, said I startled her. But something about that laugh, it didn't reach her eyes. It stayed with me. That reaction. That brief flicker of discomfort at my touch. And still I said nothing. Because that's what I learned to do. Madison had a way of shifting the conversation so smoothly that by the end of it, I felt like I owed her an apology for doubting anything in the first place. She was always 2 steps ahead emotionally, knew how to make her voice just soft enough to seem vulnerable, just disappointed enough to make me retreat. I didn't want to be that guy. The jealous husband. The suspicious one who couldn't handle the idea that his wife had a life outside of him. I had friends who acted like that with their partners, and I used to judge them for it. I didn't want to become one of them. But paranoia doesn't feel like paranoia when the puzzle keeps completing itself. One night, I stayed up late working in the study. Madison had gone to bed early, claimed she was exhausted from back-to-back meetings, and was trying to reset her sleep schedule. She'd kissed me on the cheek, mumbled something about melatonin, and padded upstairs in slippers. I didn't think much of it. Around 1 a.m. I went to brush my teeth. I passed her bedroom door and heard something. A voice. Low. Faint. Paused. Then Madison's voice, quiet but with that tone. That playful mate tone I hadn't heard in a while. I leaned closer. Shoo, stop, she whispered, followed by a laugh. You're gonna get me in trouble. Silence. Then another quiet giggle. My stomach turned. I stepped away from the door. I couldn't prove anything. Maybe she was on a late call with a friend. Maybe she was watching TikToks with headphones. Maybe, God help me, maybe I was imagining things again. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, she acted normal. Like nothing had happened. She wore a soft sweater and that new perfume and joked about being late. I watched her pack her laptop into her tote bag and head for the door like it was any other Tuesday. When the door shut behind her, I just stood in the kitchen. The silence felt suffocating. I picked up her mug. Lipstick mark on the rim. Her favorite. Work wife fuel, it said in script. I hated that mug suddenly. I opened the cabinet and shoved it behind the others. Later that day, I scrolled through my camera roll looking for a photo from a trip we took the previous winter. I got sidetracked, though, and ended up staring at photos of us smiling in restaurants, at the beach, on the back patio. We looked so happy. It didn't feel real anymore. Not just distant, fabricated. Like we'd been posing for someone else. Something had changed. And it wasn't just the outside stuff. I'd changed too. I'd become quieter. I didn't laugh as much. I'd stopped trying to surprise her with things because I didn't know what she wanted anymore or if it even mattered. The connection we used to have felt like an old cord slowly fraying at the edges, threads snapping one by one. That night I decided to wait up. I told her I had a headache and might nap on the couch. She said okay and kissed the top of my head like I was a kid she was tucking in. I watched her walk upstairs, the way she moved, how light her step was. She didn't close the door all the way. Around midnight, I walked up the stairs in socks, careful not to make a sound. I stood outside the bedroom and waited. Nothing. No voices. No laughter. Just the faint sound of her typing. Then a soft ping. I peeked in through the barely cracked door. She sat cross-legged on the bed, laptop in front of her, lit only by the screen glow. Her face was illuminated and smiling. Not a work smile. You make me feel seen smile. She typed something quickly, bit her lip. Then she laughed. Not loudly. Not in a way you'd notice unless you were listening for it. But I was. I didn't step inside. I didn't say a word. I turned, walked quietly down the stairs, and sat in the dark living room until dawn. Something was going on. Maybe it wasn't physical. Maybe there were no hotel rooms or secret meetups yet. But the Macy had moved. The inside jokes, the easy laughter, the late-night chats that once belonged to me, they were someone else's now. And even if I didn't know the full story yet, I knew I wasn't imagining things anymore. That evening started like most of the others, a quiet house, half-eaten leftovers, and the low hum of silence between the walls. Madison texted around 6:30 saying she'd be home late again. Something about a meeting that ran over, then grabbing a bite with Hannah afterward. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I wasn't supposed to be home that night. She thought I had a late shift covering an event across town, something I had mentioned earlier in the week and purposely never brought up again. But plans change. I made sure of it. I parked down the street where the hedges from the neighbor's yard offered enough coverage. I waited in my car for a long time, watching the house like a stranger might. Madison's car was already there. I double-checked my calendar just to be sure. She definitely thought I'd be out. The lights inside were dim. Curtains half-drawn. No music playing, no television glow. Just stillness. I slipped my key into the front door and turned it slowly, careful not to make a sound. The house didn't feel empty. It felt paused. Upstairs, a low murmur broke the silence. A woman's voice, soft, playful. I crept up each step, pressing my weight to the edges so the wood wouldn't creak. The hallway was dim, lit only by the faint light spilling through the cracked door of our bedroom. Then I heard it. Laughter. Hers. And not the kind she gave me anymore. I moved closer, just enough to peer through the narrow gap where the door hadn't closed all the way. There she was, Madison, half reclined on the bed in an oversized button-down that definitely wasn't one of mine. The top two buttons were undone. Her legs were folded beneath her and her hair was tucked behind one ear. She looked comfortable. Flushed. Like she had just been smiling for a while. Her laptop was perched on a pillow in front of her. On the screen was a man's face, young, bearded, familiar in the worst kind of way. Leo. She wasn't talking about work. She was laughing at something he said, fingers brushing her collar like she needed to cool herself down. She tilted her head and said, "Stop, you're so bad," with a grin I hadn't seen in months. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't banter. It wasn't one text taken out of context. This was Madison being who she really was, unguarded, connected. With someone else. He told a story. She buried her face in the pillow to muffle her laugh, kicking her feet slightly like a teenager on the phone. She looked alive in a way she hadn't in a long time. Not with me. They talked about a plan. Not a business trip. Not a project. A real plan. End of next month, Leo said. I'll fly out. We'll get that cabin. Just us. Madison hesitated. Then she smiled again. You'd actually come? I'm already looking at flights. She looked down at the blanket, eyes flickering, and whispered, "You're gonna get me in so much trouble." That's when I stepped back. Slowly, soundlessly. I didn't need to hear more. I didn't want to. I walked down the stairs, gripped the banister so hard my knuckles went white. My body moved on autopilot. The moment I was outside, the cool night air hit me like a slap to the face. I climbed into my car and just sat there, heart-thudding, watching the light glow faintly from our bedroom. She didn't even know I had been there. And I think that was the part that shattered me the most. This whole time, I'd been fighting myself, wondering if I was imagining it, if I was just losing touch, failing somehow as a partner. But now? Now I knew. I knew what my gut had been screaming at me for weeks. She wasn't distracted. She wasn't overwhelmed. She was somewhere else entirely. with someone else entirely. It wasn't physical yet, but emotionally? She was gone. There's this phrase people use when they describe cheating, crossing a line. But in that moment, watching her giggle in our bed with a man who wasn't her husband, I realized she didn't cross a line. She had moved the line, buried it, rewritten the map so I'd never see how far she'd drifted. I drove without direction, turning through streets I barely registered, trying to outrun the image of her sitting there in that shirt, whispering to Leo like he was her world and I was just background noise. I ended up at a gas station somewhere near the outskirts of town. I sat parked under a flickering overhead light and stared at the steering wheel. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to disappear. Instead, I pulled out my phone. Not to call her. Not to confront Leo. But to open the voice memo app. And I hit record. I didn't know why, maybe to mark the moment. Maybe because I couldn't trust my memory. Maybe I needed to say it out loud. Tonight I saw her. Really saw her. And she wasn't mine anymore. I hit stop. Saved it. Then just sat. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't go home either. I found a cheap hotel on the edge of town, the kind with scratchy sheets and a hum that leaked through the walls. But it was quiet. And more importantly, it was mine for the night, at least. I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence, feeling like I had just watched the final scene of a movie I didn't know I'd been in. And as strange as it sounds, there was a moment, just a flicker, where I felt relief. Because now there were no more questions. No more wondering. No more denial. Just truth. And once you have the truth, you can start building a life around it. Or away from it. I didn't go home the next morning. Not because I wanted to punish her or create some dramatic mystery or even because I was afraid to face her, but because I needed space. Real space. Away from her voice, away from the scent of her shampoo on the pillow, away from the memory of that glowing laptop screen and the softness in her voice when she talked to him. I checked into a budget hotel off the interstate. One of those places with vending machines in the lobby and blackout curtains that never quite close right. The room smelled faintly like bleach and microwave popcorn. The mattress sagged in the middle. But for the first time in weeks, I could hear myself think. I lay on the bed with my arm over my eyes, trying to breathe through the weight in my chest. The lies weren't whispers anymore. They were loud now. Deafening. And I kept thinking about all the times I'd ignored them, the strange silences, the guarded smiles, the moments when she looked right through me like I was someone she'd already said goodbye to. I remembered this one evening 2 months ago. We were supposed to have dinner together. I came home early with takeout from her favorite Thai place and a bottle of wine she used to love. I even picked up one of those stupid chocolate lava cakes she used to joke about as therapy in a box. I was trying. When I walked in, she was on the couch scrolling her phone. Didn't even look up. I already ate, she said, not taking her eyes off the screen. I stood there holding a bag full of effort. Oh, I thought we were I forgot, she cut in. It was a long day. Sorry. I remember putting the food in the fridge, still trying to salvage it. Well, we could eat together anyway. Or maybe watch the thing you said looked good on Netflix. I'm tired, Max. That was it. No anger. No sadness. Just tired. Back then I chalked it up to work. Stress. Fatigue. The slow erosion of routine. But now? I see it for what it was. She had already left me in her mind. She just hadn't packed a bag yet. The silence in the hotel room was different. It didn't echo. It just settled. Heavy but honest. I took out my notebook, one I'd kept around for work, lists, errands, and started writing. Not for clarity. Not even for peace. I just needed to get it out. Things I ignored. She stopped wearing the necklace I gave her on our anniversary. She started locking her phone even in the house. Her laugh changed. It was softer, but not for me. She started saying, I need space more than I love you. She used to hug me with both arms. Now it was just a pat. Every bullet point hit like a nail in a board I hadn't realized was already being built between us. And then came the harder part, remembering how hard I tried. I thought about the time I took a weekend off just to drive us upstate. I booked a cabin by the lake because she used to say she missed being near water. I stocked it with wine, candles, all her favorite comfort snacks. She spent half the time on Zoom calls and the other half scrolling through something on her phone. She kept tilted just out of my sight. When I asked if something was wrong, she smiled like it was nothing. I just have a lot on my plate right now. No matter how much I gave, she always seemed full on someone else's attention. The lies weren't in what she said. They were in what she stopped saying. I could have confronted her right then, in that moment, on the cabin trip, or when she came home late again claiming traffic was crazy. I could have asked for the truth directly, cornered her with questions, demanded explanations. But I didn't want the kind of truth that feels like ripping skin off. I wanted it to come gently. Kindly. The way you hope someone who once loved you would deliver it. Instead, it came through a screen. Through a soft giggle. Through a man named Leo she was planning getaways with while I was reheating leftovers and wondering if she still liked the way I touched her. I stayed in that motel for 2 nights. I didn't text her. She didn't call. That silence between us said everything. There was no panic on her end, no frantic, "Where are you?" or "Are you okay?" No check-ins. No guilt. Just absence. Cold and clean. On the second night, I stood out on the balcony with a vending machine soda and watched the freeway. Cars blurring past, all going somewhere. All part of some bigger plan. It hit me then, I didn't know where I was going. Not just physically, but emotionally. I had no plan. No roadmap. Everything I'd spent the last few years building, our home, our routines, our life together, had been designed with the assumption that we were in it for the long haul. And now? I was just some guy in a cheap hotel watching strangers head toward destinations I hadn't considered yet. I thought about calling someone. A friend. My brother. My old college roommate who still texted me every birthday without fail. But what would I say? That I didn't know my wife anymore? That I wasn't sure when exactly I lost her, only that she was definitely gone? No. This was something I had to hold for a little while longer. Alone. Not forever. Just long enough to let the anger settle into something steadier. Something real. The next morning I made a decision. I was done collecting evidence. I didn't need more confirmation. I didn't need to catch her in a hotel or read the entire chat log of her and Leo's pixelated affair. I needed to move. Not run. Not explode. Just move. So I got in the car and headed back. Not to pick a fight. Not to demand answers. I was going back to pack a bag. I wanted out. I pulled into the driveway and sat there for a minute. Her car was in its usual spot. The house looked the same, gray shutters, potted plants by the steps, wind chimes faintly ringing from the porch beam. It looked like the place we dreamed about owning when we were younger. But it wasn't ours anymore. Inside, the air felt thinner. Like the walls were tired of pretending to. I stepped over the threshold and didn't call out her name. I didn't need to. From the living room came the sound of her typing. Her nails on the keyboard, steady and fast. She was seated on the couch, coffee beside her, laptop open. Her expression was focused but soft. Familiar. Like she was writing something funny. She laughed. Quietly. I stood in the hallway for a moment, duffel bag in hand, just watching. She didn't look up. She didn't notice me. She didn't even sense me. Her world was inside that screen. That's when I turned toward the stairs, walked to her bedroom, and started folding clothes. No tears. No yelling. Just methodical motion. Shirts, jeans, socks. A pair of boots I liked. My headphones. A book I'd been meaning to read. I zipped the bag, slung it over my shoulder, and came back down the stairs. She was still typing. Still smiling. Still somewhere I couldn't reach. I walked to the door. Closed it quietly behind me. She never noticed. The thing about leaving quietly is that it doesn't feel like a scene from a movie. There's no dramatic slam of the door, no suitcase bouncing down porch steps, no sobbing confrontation on the driveway. No last-minute chase. It's just small. Simple. A whisper instead of a scream. And in the end, that's what made it hurt more. It was the next morning. The one after I packed my things and stood in the hallway watching her laugh at a message I knew wasn't for me. I'd slept at a roadside motel just 10 miles out. I could have kept driving 50 miles, 500, anywhere but here, but something inside me wanted to do it right. Or maybe I wanted to see if she'd even notice. Spoiler, she didn't. I parked around the corner instead of the driveway. Not because I was trying to hide, though maybe I was, but because I didn't want to see my own car sitting beside hers like everything was fine. The front door was unlocked. Still. Like always. I stepped inside quietly. The air in the house was cool, still scented faintly with her lavender cleaner and whatever candle she burned in the mornings. That blend of lemon and vanilla. For a second, it triggered something in me, something stupid and warm. Something that remembered how we used to spend Sunday mornings together, barefoot in the kitchen, dancing to indie playlists while pancakes browned in the SK*let. That was the version of us I wanted to remember. But the house didn't belong to that version of us anymore. I walked upstairs with my duffel bag. No rush. No nerves. It was methodical now. Just a task. I packed the rest of what I hadn't grabbed the day before: socks, backup chargers, the shaving kit she gave me on our second Christmas together. The one with the little leather initials stamped on the side. She always said it made me look put together. I threw it in the bag. Downstairs I could hear her voice. Not talking this time, laughing. The sharp, breathy kind of laugh she used when she was trying not to be loud. The kind that meant she wasn't alone even if she was technically the only person in the room. I didn't have to see it. I knew exactly what was happening. She was on her laptop again, most likely FaceTiming. Or messaging. Her fingers would be flying over the keyboard, her eyes lit up in that way I hadn't seen directed at me in months. She was with him. Leo. Again. Not physically, not yet. But mentally? Emotionally? She was already curled up beside him. Already halfway out the door. And I was still in the same house, packing like I was late for a flight to nowhere. I zipped the duffel, slung it over my shoulder, and paused in the hallway. One last look around. The framed photos lining the wall, vacations, wedding day, birthdays. Smiles caught in time, now feeling like echoes. We used to hold each other so tightly in these pictures, like we were afraid the world might pull us apart. Turns out, we didn't need help. We did that on our own. I took a deep breath, walked to the stairs, and stepped carefully to avoid the creaky board on the fourth step. Not to hide. Just force of habit. Funny how some habits stay long after the love fades. At the bottom of the stairs, I stopped in the hallway again. She was on the couch. Same spot as yesterday. Laptop in front of her. One knee tucked under her, the other bouncing lightly. She was smiling at the screen, sipping from her mug, her favorite one that read, "Maybe later, I'm editing." She wasn't editing anything. She was typing so quickly, so comfortably, like the world on that screen was more real than the one she shared with me. I watched her for a moment. Not in anger. Not even in sadness. Just watching. There was something surreal about seeing her like that, fully immersed in a world I had no place in anymore. She didn't look up. Didn't sense me. Didn't pause. I stood there long enough to count the beats between her keystrokes. And then I left. No door slam. No note. No confrontation. Just the sound of the door clicking shut behind me, swallowed by the morning wind. She didn't call after me. Didn't check the hallway. Didn't even blink. I walked back to my car parked down the block, tossed the bag into the back seat, and sat behind the wheel. I stared at the house for a long time. It looked exactly the same. A picture-perfect frame from the outside. White siding, gray shutters, little wind chimes still tapping in the breeze. You'd never guess that something was decaying quietly inside. That the life built there was already packed up and walking away. I drove. Not far. Just out. Onto the main road, past the strip malls and the intersection where she once said she wanted to raise kids someday. Past the bakery we used to visit on weekends. Past the spot where I almost proposed before deciding to wait until the mountain trip. Each place felt like a scar now. Not bleeding anymore. But still tender. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even feel angry. What I felt was stripped. Like I had finally removed the weight of pretending. Because that's what the last few weeks had been. Pretending we were fine. Pretending I didn't notice the shift in her tone, or the way her hugs lasted half a second, or the fact that our conversations had become transactional. Do you need anything from the store? Don't forget the bill is due. I'll be late again. Love doesn't leave in a dramatic explosion. It seeps out. One missed kiss at a red light. One unread message. One turn back in bed. It fades. Like breath on glass. And eventually it's just gone. I drove to the coast. A town about an hour and a half away where we used to stay sometimes. She'd always said the sea air helped her sleep better. I didn't book anything fancy, just a cheap room over a diner that smelled like salt and bleach and something fried. The window opened halfway. The floor creaked. But it didn't matter. Because when I set my bag down and sat on the edge of the bed, the only thing I could feel was this strange, quiet freedom. No more lies. No more doubts. No more sitting in my own house wondering who she was texting with that glow in her eyes. I was still hurt. Still hollow. But I wasn't powerless anymore. I was gone. And this time it was me who left without a sound. I found a room in a quiet coastal town, no plans, no messages, no apologies to consider. The air smelled like brine and dust, not lavender or her perfume. It was the first time in months I felt like I was in a place that wasn't haunted. I sat by the window, let the breeze hit my face, and didn't reach for my phone. I wasn't waiting for her to text. I wasn't hoping she'd notice I was gone. For the first time, I wasn't holding my breath. I exhaled, and she wasn't there in the air anymore. Just me. A few days later, I landed in a small harbor town. Old boats lined the dock. The innkeeper handed me a key without asking for details, just a quiet nod. That evening, I sat outside with tea, watching the sky burn orange and purple. No phones, no lies. Just wind and silence. I wasn't missing her. I wasn't waiting for closure. I was done being someone's backup plan, someone's peace offering to a man she smiled for through a screen. This wasn't an end. This was me starting over, quietly, freely, finally.